Mutapula,
and welcome to the second annual
Model African Union Youth Debate.
We are celebrating the AU at 20, and the theme this year is
Making sure that Africa is food secure, and what role can young people play, and what can governments do to support the young people.
Hope you enjoy!
I am so excited that you guys managed to come. Thank you for making the time. I just want to turn your direction to the WhatsApp group, our WhatsApp group. I just put there some things that I need you guys to be familiar with as we go from one session to the next. Just wink at me if you've seen it.
Yeah, sure.
Cool. So when we are going to the different sections, if you're inspired to be the person that proposes that motion, please raise your placard and the chairperson will acknowledge you and you will then read that for me. So we are not going to start the debate without someone saying that first one there. We are not going to go to the formal caucus without anyone proposing that motion, as well as we're not going to go to the informal session if you guys don't propose that. So you guys are the drivers of this debate. So we are Africans here, and I'm happy that we have explored with the concept. So really today is about that. I'll tell you a short story. At the foundation, beginning of the year, our CEO said, let's map up the year, right? And we are going to celebrate President Thabo Mbeki as he turns 80. And we are going to reflect on the 8 decades of his life. And as I was doing my research, I found out that President Mbeki, at 10 years old, wanted to join the ANC. He went there, can you imagine a short boy wanting to be part of the ANC? And they said, you're too young, go back. So he went back, and he went and he waited for about 4 years. Then he went back and he was 40 and he said, I'm ready to serve my people. But for me, what stood out was not this child who was, just wanted to burn things or destroy. I saw this child who wanted to build, who saw the inequalities in his community, and he saw himself playing a meaningful role in that. And for me, that 10-year-old boy, that spirit, I see it in you guys, because you guys have spent so much time researching, working with your partners, right? Making sure that you're prepared for today, because you want to see this continent succeed. So I am really proud of you guys, and I want you guys to give yourselves a round of applause for just being able to do that. So like I said, this is the second annual debate, right? We had our first one last year. It was completely virtual because of the pandemic. But I'm happy that we could be able to gather like this, and we are joined by a few colleagues online. There they are, right? Some of them are in the Eastern Cape, others are in different parts of the continent. So we are not just South Africans, but we are actually all African, because that's what matters, right? You could be white, I could be black, you could be Xhosa, I could be Tonga, I could be anything, but what makes us all common, or what brings us all together, is the fact that we are African. And I think it's cool to be African. For the longest time I thought something was wrong. Why should I be black? Why should I be African? But I actually got to realize it's actually cool to be this kind of person who, for the longest time, was told you are nothing, you're subhuman, and finally now it clicks that, hey, we are actually equal, we deserve the equal opportunities that are there. So I'm really, really excited, and I can't wait to hear your thoughts. But before we start, let me just acknowledge a few people that we have here. People who have taken their time just to hear your thoughts, right? I'll start with Mrs. Mbeki, right there. Right? Mrs. Mbeki is passionate, devoted, committed to women's development, right? She has worked so hard so that she can see women become the owners of their destinies, to be able to be financially included and be able to participate in the economy, and we are just so happy that you've taken the time. We are really, really grateful. And of course, we have Mr. Christo. He is the Executive Director at Agri SA. He is going to be sharing his thoughts after this debate, just to align us and share with us where can we look for these opportunities, where are the institutions, what's actually the landscape and the environment of agriculture and food production. So if you are really interested in being a farmer here today, if you're interested in understanding the value chains and just the broad topic, he's your person that you need to be looking out for and listening to very attentively. And of course, we've got our special guest from the African Union Youth Commission. They're here. You're going to be hearing more about them. and of course the supporters here at the debate. I have bad news, but it's not the end of the world. The patron, President Baby, he is busy with the ANC Policy Conference. Now we all know how much he's dedicated so much of his life to the ANC. And he now looks at this policy conference as an opportunity to help the ANC rebuild and renew. So we didn't want to, like make him feel, like he has to choose. So we said, you know what, it's okay, but the winners today, right? The people who are standing out, we'll be able to have an intimate session with him. So please put your best foot forward, right? But also this debate is also going to be on YouTube on Monday. Please, when we send out that link, share it, right? Share it, because that's an opportunity for you to also start profiling yourself as a speaker, as a thought leader, as a Pan-Africanist. So let's do that. We are going to be pushing it on Twitter, pushing it on Instagram. If you're not following us, please follow us. And if you have time today, I doubt you will, but we're having our Wi-Fi there. Please make sure that you are tweeting and you're taking pictures, and the hashtag is #MOU2022. All right, I'm talking a lot. Let me invite the person who brought us all here, the brains behind this debate to begin with. Can I ask Ms. Miranda Mbete to just share with us why did she come to the foundation with this idea?
Hello everyone. Before I begin, I would like to thank everyone present at today's event, the students who are here today whose voices we are eager to hear, everyone at the Thabo Mbeki Foundation who has worked endlessly to make today's event possible, and everyone who has taken the time to attend. I would also like to thank Mrs. Mbeki, who is present today. It is such an honor to stand in the same room as you. I would also like to thank two people whom I lost last year, two people who have had an indescribable impact on me and many more. Firstly, the late Honorable Lindiwe Mabuza, who has defied the odds time and time again, achieved the impossible, and leaves a never-ending legacy both in politics and in literature and prose. She's a personal role model of mine, and I'm so grateful to have had her as my mentor. Secondly, I would like to thank my father, Gershom Mbetse, who I know is with me today in spirit, for teaching me to believe in myself when I did not, for shaping me who I am along with my mother, and for leaving such an impact in this world. The root cause behind the creation of the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Model African Union started with a book that left a bad taste in my mouth, my Cambridge International History book. Perhaps to some, a beautiful fabrication of facts and fiction. It was in this very book that I read the words, colonialism in Africa had some benefits. Then proceeding to list the quote-unquote advances in education and fields of medicine for the so-called natives, who in actuality reaped no benefits, but rather experienced sheer unimaginable horror and violence for the next centuries to come. The fact of the matter is that we have to learn and discuss the so-called history written by those who want to tell us what our ancestors have experienced in a nicely sugar-coated package. It is then that I had the idea of creating a model African Union, except it is loosely based on the African Union and focuses more on addressing as well as voicing the endless concerns of the youth. I wrote a letter then to the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, highlighting some programs I thought could be beneficial for our youth, and after a couple of months, with the incredible efforts of everyone working at the foundation, we hosted the first debate in 2021. This debate just acts as a starting point for us African youth. We have to reconceptualize not just what it means to be African, but also the very systems that cement our countries. Systems which have been accorded by colonial powers and to this day are responsible for the underdevelopment of Africa, hindering progress in education and government legislature. I believe that the current hybrid of artificial laws, ones that simply act as a facade, are laws that fight against the very will of us Africans. As one of the greatest African scholars, Dr. Kiabotseki Fukaa, described, African laws are not written for the African people. They are written for those who are interested in exploiting Africa and its people in order to facilitate their task, that of underdeveloping Africa. These laws are rigid and unchanging. They are a noose of suffocation grazing our necks. We are Africans, and let that sink in for a while, because we must support one another regardless of the borders of the past and present that have demarcated us. The borders which have been slashed on our very backs as a stark reminder that we should remain submissive. But that needs to change. We need to have conversations amongst the youth and intergenerational dialogue to come up with viable solutions for our continent before it's too late. We need to make our continent a symbol of success and pride. We can make it a symbol of compassion, productivity, and fairness. It is the least we can do for our generation and the generations of the future, the bare minimum, to ensure that the next generation has it easier and will be spared from the hardships their parents have endured. Children still inherit the worries and concerns of their parents. At an early age, they carry these as a weight to school and back, and we expect them to be all right, to succeed in school. We are all expected to succeed in a world where every right has to be purchased. Therefore, we need to work together with integrity, the rarest mineral on this continent, and we must choose it first, not the diamonds or the gold. Integrity is what allows us to trust one another, improve the economy, and value our people enough to improve their wages and give them dignifying jobs, jobs they can and should be proud of. We need to continue to fight for a better life, and we cannot do it on our own. It is like moving a carriage with a bag full of seeds necessary for the next foundation, the future. Except it has holes and bleeds dry during the journey. A select few are not enough. Elitism is not the answer. What matters is that we can all move forward, and if somebody stumbles along the way, then we help them get back up. While society might often tell us that individuality is what makes us succeed, that success is undefined. If it is simply monetary, then it is not enough. We need to support each other, create a net to prevent those who do not want to see us succeed from tearing through us. If we were not supposed to help one another and communicate, we would not have been given a voice and a conscious mind. Hollis Reed, a slave, wrote over a century ago, "Africa has been reserved for the development of a higher order of civilization. The world may only value us for the riches we stand on and may cut us up into pieces, but they have forgotten one thing, an entity they have undermined for centuries, our minds. Our minds as a collective can solve and heal. It is called Kalunga in the ancient cosmology book of the Congo, the seventh direction, healing the ailments of our hearts. And that is what we must act on. We must do it for our parents, for our ancestors, and for the children of the future. And it all starts with this debate, because all of you are crucial to our future. All of you matter. Your voices matter, and though it may not often feel that way, all of you are capable of the inconceivable. Thank you.
Wow, that's inspiring. I like the part where you said, we are African, and then let's let that sink in, right? I used to go to vets for these personal mastery sessions, and I would make them, see it in their chest and say, I am an African, right? So later on, I'll just check, because I know you guys are still nervous now. When everything is done, I would like us to actually say that and say it like we mean it, that we are African, because that's what we need to start owning, right, as young people. So you guys ready? So when the African Union was established, right, President Bailey said it's time for Africa to have a voice when it comes to global affairs. It's time for Africa to be able to describe the kind of Africa that it actually wants, to bring forth solutions to African problems. He saw Africa playing a meaningful role in peace and security in this continent. So for us, it's very important that we understand the African Union and understand and investigate if it actually understands us as young people. That's why we are so excited to be having our panel. One lady is missing. She's actually, she's just touched down now, Ora Tambo. She was in Harare. There was a ministerial meeting, Kawemene. So she also will be joining us. But I just want to check, do we have that video sorted? The CEO wanted to be here. Unfortunately, due to family commitments in the Eastern Cape, it was an emergency. He's so heartbroken, but he wishes all of you delegates all the best. He's super excited, but he also just asked us to record him while he sent a message to you guys. So if you could turn your attention to the screen for our CEO, Mr. Max Okwana.
Thank you very much to all of you for taking time to participate in this discussion today. As you know, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation is your platform to formally and informally have a dialogue about the challenges that faces our continent and to seek solutions to such challenges rather than waiting for outsiders to provide solutions for ourselves. This we do formally through the Thabo Mbeki African School for Public and International Affairs, through which we seek to produce change agents for the advancement of Africa's Renaissance. And soon it will also be through the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library, which will be the repository of archive material from leaders from various spheres of life, both political, economic, and social, and where we will be using the archives to reflect on the past as we seek to understand the present, whilst we are trying to find innovative solutions for the future. We also work informally, like the debate we are having today, where we wish to challenge young people to take interest in the work of the continent, in particular the work of the African Union. Many will know that on this month, 20 years ago, the African Union was inaugurated in Durban, South Africa, under the chairmanship of our patron, President Mbeki. This African Union is an inheritance that the current generations and future generations received from the past leaders of our liberation struggles. The work of the African Union seeks to ensure that we rid our continent of the burden of disease, of the burden of poverty, and of the burden of conflicts, and make sure that we work towards a continent that is free of all of these challenges, but at peace with itself and the rest of the world. Each year, since its existence, the AU focuses on a particular challenge that faces our continent. This year, the theme is strengthening resilience in nutrition and food security in the African continent. With its vast lands, good climate, abundance of water, innovative technology, and hard-working population, in particular women and young people, there is no reason why Africa faces the current levels of poverty. In fact, Africa must surely be the net exporter of various food products to attract foreign currency and to feed itself. So today we wish to challenge you in this discussion, and in particular to examine practically how can Africa achieve this objective. We will be looking with keen interest to the outcomes of this discussion and how can it influence a discourse about nutrition and food security in our continent. We would, as a foundation, want to journey with you permanently as we roll out some of the initiatives which will be of relevance and interest to all of you. Such programs as the Kilimo Agricultural Project, where we seek to reintroduce young learners to practical agriculture at a very early age. We will also want to invite you to join us on the program of the fireside chats to look at our continent through the prisms or through the eyes of its young people. And lastly, the Buy a Brick campaign, which is a spiritual journey for all young Africans to contribute a brick towards the African Renaissance Project in the form of the Thabo Mbeki Presidential Library. We all have the responsibility to move away from the disillusionment of our past history of slavery, colonialism, and apartheid to an inspired future where all of us will be the active participants in the rebirth of our continent, where we and the generations to come can live with pride. Thank you very much for all of you for being here today, and may you have a successful deliberation.
I'm really excited for this journey, like the CEO said, and I want to now move to our panel. Are you guys ready for this panel? The reason why we are having this kind of discussion is because at the Africa Day lecture, we were really celebrating 20 years of the African Union. And when we were really talking, we found that young people in the audience are saying, yeah, but we don't know much about the African Union. We know that it's there, but if I'm a young person, I want to get involved, how do I do that? You know, so we thought, let's bring some of the bright minds who I've had the pleasure of working with while I was like still about 18, you know, and just really bring them here and say, tell us more about the African Union. What do we do? What can we do? If I am a person who's studying international relations or studying politics, what are the opportunities? Where should I look? Can I volunteer? Where are the opportunities? And does the African Union actually understand my vision as a young person right now? Taking everything into consideration, the economy, are we able to say we believe in the African Union and the African Union believes in us, young people? So that's the conversation today, just to give you guys a bit of foundation as you debate around the African Union. Okay, are you guys ready? So I'm going to ask my guests to introduce themselves because they have impressive CVs. And I'll start with Mr. Ismail.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah,
Thank you very much. At the outset, before I say anything further, there's a very famous quote. United, there is little that we cannot do in a host of cooperative ventures. But divided, there is little we can do, for we dare not meet a powerful challenge at odds and sink asunder. And so it is with a full and grateful heart that I thank the Thabo Mbeki Foundation. I thank the organizers for allowing us this platform to come together really in an intimate and informal way, not only to recognize the problems afflicting the continent, but as the youth, as Africa's greatest asset, discussing how we can bring about solutions to these problems. So it really is with a great deal of appreciation that I stand here today. In introducing myself, my name is Ismail Jusuf. I stand currently as the president of the African Union Student Commission. The African Union Student Commission is a subsidiary of the African Union. We're based in Hatfield at the University of Pretoria. And often there is some disillusion that how do the youth, how do young people come about and play a role in African continental affairs? Well, I stand here and I say that you can do it through us. We're asking for volunteerism. We're asking for the youth to play a hand. I'm a lawyer, I studied law. I'm currently doing my master's in international law, so I know a thing or two about continental affairs, and I'm so happy to be representing an organization that truly embodies the values not only of the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, but really of Africa as a whole. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The next gentleman, I know him from WITS. He used to be my tutor. So I used to give him a headache, but I didn't do my readings. So good to have you here. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Pendulum. My name is Lenan Munyai. I'm here representing the African Peer Review Mechanism. But before I say much, I just want to thank the organizers and you participants for being here at this debate. I also want to take this opportunity to honor Mama for being here. Thank you so much for supporting young people. When I was still a student at Wits University a few years back, the Thabo Mbeki Foundation really was home to me, and I'm glad that that legacy of incubating young Pan-African ideas is still ongoing. So I'm also, as much as I'm working at the African Union now, I'm ready and available to always give my services to the foundation. So my name is Lenan Munyai, like I've said. I coordinate the African Peer Review Mechanism Youth Program. I'm a researcher by training. I'm also a PhD candidate at the University of Johannesburg, but I spent most of my younger days at Wits University. I lived just across the road here at Wits Junction and Banato, and I'm really crazy about youth development. We have an annual youth symposium, which is its third edition. We just returned from Uganda, where we were addressed by President Museveni, where we met as young people, about 800 young people. We're in Kampala, really discussing the issues that are faced by young people and giving calls for action to heads of states of the African Peer Review Magazine, which is an institution actually founded by, amongst others, President Mbeki. It's based here in Midrand, South Africa. And it's amongst some of the AU institutions that are here in South Africa, the Pan-African Parliament, the Leopard Agency, and of course the APRM. So I'm really glad to be here. I'm going to try to spend as much time as I can with you here during your debate, listening to you, hoping to discuss ideas of how we can further improve the African youth agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Right. So we're going to kickstart our discussion, right? Because for me, when that lady in Africa, they asked the question, but where are the youth instruments, where are the youth institutions for the AU? What's the AU's vision for the youth? I was, a light bulb moment said, okay, so young people are interested, but they just need to know. So can you tell us more about, maybe I can start with you, Isma. What is the AU's vision for the young people of Africa?
Thank you. So this is an important question. What is the African Union's vision for the youth? Well, at the outset, we have to understand what the African Union's vision is in general. It's integration. Integration not just of the youth, but integration of the entire continent, socially, economically, politically. And so really, if you extrapolate that onto the youth, you see exactly what the African Union wants from the youth: interaction and integration. We want the youth to take part. We want the youth to stand up and say, we recognize the problems, and we recognize that we, the youth, can come together to solve these problems. And so what we desire is for forums like these, instances where we can come together and say, well, here we are the future leaders, we are the people who are going to take this continent forward, and so this is what we're going to do. Education is a huge facet that we're interested in, educating the youth. A lot of the youth these days tend to be complacent, tend to look around and complain about the state of affairs in the country or in the continent, but really come together and say we're going to do something. So not only do we want to educate the youth, we want them to come together. And I think lastly, what the African Union Student Commission wants from the youth is to be proud. Be proud of the fact that you're an African. And Chair mentioned that there's a chant to say, I am an African. Of course, we have the famous speech from the patron, I am an African. I'm molded by the hills and the valleys. You've got to be proud to be an African. You've got to be proud to be a part of this great African diaspora, so that you can stand up proudly and say, I will take my destiny into my own hands. I am the master of my fate. That's what we want to do as the African Union Student Commission. And again, very grateful to be a part of this forum, to have platforms like these, so that we can come together and air out these problems.
Sure. Interesting, right? Someone once said, during slavery, apartheid, any sort of oppression that existed in the continent, right? For a black person, in one day, you would be humiliated over 100 times, just because of your skin color, right? So this African Renaissance project is about reassuring a black person 100 times a day that you actually matter. So to say this thing of we should be proud to be African, the African Union has a role to play to reassuring us that we are not subhuman and that something's wrong with us being African. But interesting take. Then I wanted to just ask, what are some of the issues you guys deal with at the APRM? What programs or challenges that you guys discuss?
Thank you so much. So the African peer review mechanism was actually created by heads of states, like I said, including President Mbeki, President Wade, Obasanjo, Bouteflika. Those were the Pan-Africans when the OAU transformed to become the African Union. Realized that there's so much interference in African governance, and back then we had the structural adjustment programs, and a lot of foreign governments were telling Africans how to govern themselves. So President Mbeki and his peers then decided that we need to sort of standardize governance on the continent so that we can have what we call good governance, and also realizing that democracy is very diverse, but there's certain standards of governance that are acceptable on the African continent, obviously underpinned by Pan-Africanism. So these heads of states then decided that we're going to peer review each other based on certain instruments of governance. So every 4 years, a country then opens itself up to experts on good governance who reviews the country, opens up space for young people, civil society, governance experts to sort of give contributions to some of the challenges that a country is facing as far as governance is concerned. Then when they've finished sort of giving these contributions, a set of recommendations are then given to the country. Then heads of states sort of have one-on-one sort of debate. And actually yesterday, the Republic of Kenya was actually undergoing a peer review with President Kenyatta seated, being asked by his peers, what are you doing with regards to infrastructure development, access to healthcare, and etc. Now, going to the subject of today, as far as youth development, I can tell you that there's been a challenge really from OAU to AU, where the OAU was almost like a very state-led institution. And when the OAU was turning to become AU, there was a realization that we need to turn this continental organization to be a people-driven organization. Now, who are these people? These people are you, because over close to 70% of this continent is made up of people that are under the age of 35, the youth. However, in leadership positions, in institutions that run the continent, young people are underrepresented. So these debates, these conversations, these tables that you sit on are actually very, very important, because the leaders of this continent are you guys.
Yeah. So our CEO likes to say, think of a liberation icon holding this flame of fire, right? What's important as young people is that we don't take that flame and we burn our continent down. We need to continue that flame. We need to keep this country burning, hope. And that's why we are investing in young people, because we want that flame to continue. So now it brings me to AU after 20 years, right? What do you think are the challenges? Why do young people not know about some of the AU's work? What can be done to mitigate that sort of disconnect from the AU and young people? How do we make sure that I know if there's like a volunteering sort of opportunity? Where's the AU and where's young people, and why are we not in the same sort of conversational table?
It's a very good question. Now, I think I have an answer. If you look at our slogan there, it says the re-engineering of African minds. And why do we say that? Why have we chosen that slogan specifically? It's because in the last 20 years, as my friend said, there has been quite a disconnect between the OAU and the AU. But in these 20 years since the AU has been founded, I think that the emphasis, the focus really has been on the elder generation, elder statesmen really, when it's a shame because, as my friend pointed out, the majority of the population of Africa are youth. And so we realize there's untapped potential there, and we want to tap into that potential. So the re-engineering means that we need to shift the focus away from older people and bring in new blood. Bring in new blood who have new ideas and can innovate. And to do that, we need to market Africa in the eyes of the youth, through the lens of the youth. And I think it's critically important then to have organizations like the African Union Student Commission that represents students, that represents the youth. And so currently, while we are the only African Union Student Commission, I believe, nationally, we plan on expanding into different campuses, expanding nationally and then expanding continentally into different countries as well. So that the youth know that, fine, I want to do something and I can do something because these organizations indeed exist. My voice indeed matters. It's not just a matter of some old person in a parliament far away that's making decisions for me, on behalf of me. I can actually play a role in my own life, in my own destiny, in my own future, in my continent's future, in my country's future. I can do that. So that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to expand, market ourselves in the lens, in the view of the youth, for the youth.
Right, thank you so much. Guys, if you have questions, like maybe this is not an opportunity also, just raise your hand so that I'm not the only one asking the questions. If you do have a question, please do go ahead. But you do another?
So, like most institutions, the African Union has so many policies, programs, and initiatives. But the disconnect that's there is, for lack of a better word, because this will bring in ideas around neoliberalism, but there's no trickle down in that the AUC is based in Addis Ababa, the headquarters, and the youth division, which coordinates the youth program, is there. It comes up with so many policies, ideas. So at the moment, there's a document or a policy called the APAE, the African Plan of Action on Youth Empowerment. I'm going to repeat again, the African Plan of Action for Youth Empowerment. And it's sort of built on a lot of policy documents. Some of them, I actually read them in the concept note. If you read the concept note, well written. It has some of the Decade Plan, the African Youth Charter. However, these policies, they are given to member states, and member states then have institutions in the country that are supposed to take these policies, then translate them into youth engagement, youth empowerment, and etc. Here in South Africa, you have the National Youth Development Agency based in Midrand. I think it's got new leadership at the moment and I hope you can engage them. But the biggest challenge is that young people, I don't know what the challenge is, but you know more about the United Nations more than you know about the African Union. If I have to ask you about Agenda 2063 and the 7 aspirations, some of you are unable to sort of understand them. However, if you go to the SDGs, you can mention all of them, know what needs to be done, and etc. So, Agenda 2063 is the blueprint or the sort of long-term vision for Africa to sort of develop. It's now past 10 years, with a couple of more years to go. And in Aspiration 6 calls for an Africa that is led by young people, women and children. And I wish for you, if you can spend more time reading these documents and sort of looking at a local level. Some universities like UP has the African Union Student Commission. When I was still a student at Vets, we had AU Youth Club. I'm not sure if it's still there, but we had a youth club. So you young people that are here that I believe are privileged to have access should then go to some of these institutions. For example, the 3 institutions of the AU that are here. You have access to me now. How can I then support you so that you know more about the AU, go to the Pan-African Parliament, they've got a youth caucus. Go to the NEPA agents, they have a new CEO that's very vibrant and wants to upskill youth development. At the parent where I work with Professor Maloka, who has been working hard to make sure youth are engaged. So, the information is there. However, you have to take the extra step to go and knock at these doors, to volunteer, to read more, to take short courses. I know there's a lot of short courses that the Thabo Mbeki Foundation with UNISA, so that you know more. Because you have to have a Pan-African foundation before you go at the global scale. The SDGs that majority of you know, all of them from 1 to 17, were influenced by Africa Common Position, because we had just moved away from Millennium Development Goals. Now moving to SDGs. If you look at all the 17 SDGs, and you look at Agenda 2063 and its aspirations, you realize that 90% of what is in the SDGs is already there, and it's even a longer term vision for Africa. So I really urge you to spend more time reading about the policies that are there, then knocking at doors and finding yourself in spaces where you can then find what's being done. No one is going to come to your institution and hold your hand. You're going to have to reach out, find ways you can engage. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Also, if there are any questions from our virtual people, please do raise your hand and we will then note you. But yeah, there seems to be a hand here. We are at the end of our session. Thank you so much.
Take questions.
My name is David Garabello, and I have a question for you, Mr. Munyai. So you say at the African peer review mechanism, they meet every after 4 years to review governance and
Yes.
You have to speak up.
oh, sorry. So you say they meet every after 4 years to kind of check the governance, whether they're doing it correctly, whether they're serving the people. So I have two questions for you. So the first one is, if a leader is seen not to run good governance, what is it like? What measures are put in place to really try to transform that? And my second question is it an effective? Has it been effective in transforming the governance in Africa? And would you say it will be a good idea for us as South Africa to have some sort of a South African peer review mechanism for our ministers to check if they are really doing a nice job in the ministerial departments? Yes, that's all. Thank you.
Is there another question before we? Okay, so I'm going to go from the lady with the white jacket.
Just pass the mic back to me.
Greetings to the panel and all the delegates and guests here. My name is Oratida Mugase, and I have a question for not just the Thabo Mbeki Foundation representatives, but the panel at large. A lot of what we are gathered here today is to give a voice to the youth. And I have a question for how the different organizations that you represent that have an objective to reach the youth, how are these organizations planning to reach the youth that aren't, I would say, privileged enough to be in spaces like universities or even high school or primary school? Because when we look at Africa in general, a large, vast majority of our youth aren't in places like this, aren't in university, or they don't have the available resources to be in such spaces, whether it be in a village or a hometown or whatever it is. So what are the objectives or what are the plans that the organizations have put in place to reach these youth as well?
Great question. Great question. Next one.
Oh,
My question, my name is Pandamina Watama, and my question is somewhat related to what Agile Mokai says, in the sense that most of the media that we do consume is through the prism of the West. So how is it that most African people, African youth are going to be geared to more Pan-African content and be aware of such environments like these, like conducive environments such as this conference and other AU, Thabo Mbeki Foundation, like programs and initiatives? How are we going to give them the resources to reach these places?
Thank you. Last one.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lumatanga, and my question is: in addition to existing peer review mechanisms, how does the AU bridge the disconnect between existing policy in all fields and implementation in its member states?
Sure. I'm so happy I'm not a panel. I'm not a panelist. Yeah, but I will speak for the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, right? And I respond to the question, how do we plan on accessing people who are in the rural areas, people who don't have access, people who are in the outskirts, right? So for the foundation, we saw that it's actually a complex sort of thing. There isn't one solution. So what we believe is that every person, every organization needs to find its niche and find a way of empowering those who wouldn't be normally empowered. So we have something called a profit-rural education project, where we go to rural areas, we go to the township areas, we identify schools, and we assist them with digital education. We give them digital devices, laptops, tablets, right? And the box that we have is actually geared to work in places where there is little electricity, because we have a UPS that you can charge overnight, which can then be used as your electricity. So that's what we have done. We saw a need, especially after the pandemic. You know, when the pandemic hit and the president said, stay home, online learning. The kids in Santon could do that, but the kids in the Eastern Cape, in Etua, in some of the Buhlabela districts that we are in Mpumalanga, they were not able to do that. So we wanted to give them still the education so that they don't miss out on an entire academic year. And we have been fortunate to have partners, because another thing that this speaks to is that idea of collaboration in different organizations. We have been able to collaborate and be able to play our part. And it's not the solution. Other organizations can then fill the gaps, because we are currently in the foundation phase. We haven't started empowering the kids in the high schools in those areas. We haven't even started, with the TVET colleges in those areas. We are just in the primary schools. So the problem or the challenge is complex, and it needs all of us to participate and collaborate. That's the foundation. Doesn't take it. That's not what you did.
Thank you so much. So many hard-hitting questions, and that's what I appreciate about young people. They're not diplomatic about things. They always go and ask the question straight up. So one of the questions was asked by Carmelo, who happens to be representing Ethiopia, home of the African Union headquarters. So he asks, what are the measures being put in place to make sure that the APRM actually is effective, and if this mechanism, there are sort of consequences for not having good governance. So the first thing that I'll let you know about is the mechanism is actually voluntary. So the country sort of accedes to the APRM voluntarily, and South Africa is one of the founding countries and has undertaken two reviews. The first one was in 2007 under President Mbeki, and it was a very good report, but it also acted as an early warning for a number of issues. This report is available online, so if you go on Google right now and say APRM Review Report 2007, you will read it and find out sort of what were some of the governance challenges in 2007, and sort of reflect now, almost like close to 2 decades later. Since heads of states are sort of sovereign and they represent countries, the institution does not have punitive sort of measures, sort of hitting the wrist, you're not doing well. However, there's peer pressure. But the most important is sort of sharing of best practices. So the best practices in each and every single country on the continent on a number of things. So for instance, in 2019, the Republic of Namibia realized just before the pandemic that there's high youth unemployment, close to 60% of the young people in Namibia were unemployed. And these are young people that have university qualifications up to master's level. This is a universal sort of challenge on the African continent, including here in South Africa. Now, the findings of this report, just 3 days ago in Morocco, were being tabled by young Namibians who were then seated at the National Youth Council of Namibia, seated alongside youth from the NYDA, saying, these are the challenges that were picked up in Namibia, and these are some of the proposed solutions. You as South African young leaders, how can you take these solutions and take them home and implement? So I think that's a very good sort of initiative. Can it be taken and sort of be cascaded to provinces? Brilliant idea. It's already happening in other countries. In Kenya, counties, provinces are already peer reviewing each other. So you sort of have the leadership of this province meeting with the other province, they peer review each other, share best practices. The sort of anchor of the institution is not to punish, but rather to share the best practices. And I think it's one of the best sort of institutions or idea that has come from the South, the global South. And I think young people can actually, because it's evolving and it's getting more influence from young people, like you've said. Now here in South Africa, there are institutions that work with the APRM. There's what we call the National Governing Council. These sort of people that represent the APRM at a national level. Your idea is a brilliant idea and should be taken up. We have debates, call for actions before the second review was done. The South African Institution of International Affairs actually mobilized young people throughout the country to give in a written report for young people. And again, if you go online, you can be able to find what young people are saying. Now, I've been saying go online, and this answers the issue of reaching young people that are in the rural area and suburban areas. We do have a challenge. We have to acknowledge that there's digital apartheid, and that one, young people don't have smart devices to now they'll be able to go online and reach this very important information. If they do, some of them actually cannot understand the languages in which these documents are in. So they could be in English, French, but most young people in the rural areas are unable to actually read some of these languages. So one, they don't have access to smart devices. Two, data. One of the biggest requests that I get as a representative of an institution everywhere on the continent when trying to engage young people is that, could you buy us data? Because you can see online, you've got young people that are joining in online, but for them to be with us throughout the day, even 2 gigabytes of data is not enough. Now, these are challenges. Some of the solutions, one, I think our telecommunications institutions can sort of do what they were doing during the pandemic and make it a best practice to sort of reduce the price of data. 2, subsidies on sort of hardware so that young people have smart devices to reach information. And most importantly, not forget old means of communication such as radio, print media, and actually having ambassadors of some of these policies. So majority of you do have home villages. You are here being exposed to such brilliant ideas from the Thabo Mbeki Foundation, the African Union, and all other institutions. When you go home, and a lot of you are from universities, UP, you're wearing your nice UP t-shirt or cap. A lot of other young people do engage because they want to find out how they can get to UP. Please take the opportunity to sort of preach the good gospel of Pan-Africanism, youth development, and how they can actually have access to some of these initiatives. I don't have all the answers, but I do believe that these debates, this sitting, will actually come up with some of the solutions, some of the answers. So, when this is done, the outcome document of this will be a very interesting one. I would like you to have a copy of it so that I can also get ideas on how to then upscale some of the initiatives that we have. Thank you.
Thank you. My, Lennon, I don't think I would add anything to that, eh? You've exhausted all the airtime. And if I may say, I don't think it was directed at me, the question of the peer review mechanism, but I think I agree as well. I think it would be very nice to see peer review mechanisms at all stages. I think it falls in line with good governance, with accountability, with transparency, all important values of the African Union itself. But you raise some very important issues there. You raise, well, initially the answer that I had set down was we like to use technology as a tool. We like to use technology as a tool to empower young people through social media, to give young people a voice, right? To say that while you can't be with us here physically in person, we can connect with you wherever you are in the world. And you then got me thinking, indeed there is a divide, indeed there is a gap between those who are privileged enough to have the data, to have the mobile phone, and those who have the passion, have the willingness to want to participate, but don't have the means to participate. I don't have all the answers either, but I think that this is where the solutions begin. You're having these debates as to how we can reshape policy so as to make it possible for everyone to engage. Engaging shouldn't be the problem. Engaging, participating shouldn't be the problem. Implementing things shouldn't be the problem. And so we need to have youth who are given a voice. Anyone who is silenced that's a blight on us. That's a blight on all of us. And so I'm totally in favor of anything, any solution that would allow all of us to be on the same page, on the same social media page if given the necessary means. And it's a very important, very powerful, very poignant question, I think, that was raised as well as to why is it that the youth of today usually see themselves or allow their image to be dictated by the West. It's very important. I know this is a topic that President Mbeki is quite passionate about himself, and it's something I don't understand. Why do we allow others to tell us who we're meant to be ourselves? It just doesn't make sense. It goes back to that pride of being an African. And so I think that we all need to come together and shape our own image, and not to let our image, the creation of our image, be outsourced to somebody else in some faraway land telling us who we are and what we're meant to be. We need to take control, as I said earlier, of our own destiny. And that often goes hand in hand with participating and speaking up and coming together. And when we see the results, when we see how much we've done, how much we can do, then we are proud to be an African. Then we are proud to say, no, President of America doesn't need to tell me who I am and what I can do. I can do that for myself. Again, as I say, I'm the master of my own fate. So, this is why we're here today. I'm very proud to be a part of this large diaspora of people who are willing to make a change. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Is there anyone? Okay, let me see. Is there? Okay, you guys don't want to wait. Let me just start with the guys joining virtually. Is there a question online, Biogazi? Okay, there's no question online. I'm gonna give you guys 30 seconds, each person, to ask the question. Don't give us the context, the background, get to it so that we can start with the debate because I'm worried about time. Is that okay? Okay, so I'm gonna start here and go this way, right? Okay, if you've asked a question before, please write it on a note. Yes, you can go. Okay. Perhaps just quickly house rules. If you want to go to the bathroom when the debate starts, the chairperson will also reiterate this. You just raise your hand and say point of personal privilege. Okay? Okay, so Miranda, we have a question. Oh, you had a question. Yes.
Greetings, delegates and the panel. My name is Seema Lorita Jennifer Faith Sibalusa Matimba. It is my honor and pleasure to be here. The question I have is, as everyone has discussed, Africa has not only the potential, we have the young people, the working force, we have the resources. It seems as though we have all the advantages. But I want to ask, ever since we have gained our independence and gained our freedom in governing our own people, what do you think is stopping us from reaching our true potential? Do you believe that Africa is growing in accordance to our advantages, but within the time frame we've had from our independence? Thank you.
Next question. Miranda?
I was just wondering, and I wanted to ask the entire panel this question. There's often this talk about the youth taking up initiative and, looking at opportunities that are currently present. But in actual fact, I believe that there's not enough being done from outside sources. For example, there's this talk of unemployment amongst the youth, especially those who have graduated with university degrees. Who is helping them, get jobs? Why are they still unemployed? Why do they have to push carts in the parking lots? Why are they not given a platform? Oftentimes, I don't believe that it's because people don't want to take initiative. I don't think they have the time and perhaps sometimes even the confidence to reach these platforms, because often in society, especially in South Africa, it's often you're looked upon depending on the job you have, the title you have. It's still that social construct that is embedded in the system.
Thanks very much. Next one. Take questions.
Hello, my name is Ayanda Ravere, and I have a question that I thought about while listening to the other delegate's question, and it was that in countries like America and China and the UK, part-time jobs for teenagers between the age of 15 to 19 is so common. And I was wondering, because in South Africa, it's so hard for the same age group to get part-time jobs, like simple jobs as just washing dishes at restaurants, or your more practical jobs that these teenagers can do. And I was wondering what initiatives you guys have taken to help teenagers get jobs, because yes, it is important for graduates to get jobs once they get their degrees, but there are also kids out there where who want to get part-time jobs so they can help their families as well without necessarily finishing school first.
Thank you so much. Is that the question? Okay, there's another question. Just quickly, just to speed this up, the talk around unemployed graduates, right? Presently, always talks about there are unemployed graduates and there are unemployable graduates. Meaning, as a country, as a continent, we have to understand what our continent or our country needs. What skills do we actually need? Because if you're going to be studying how to create a typewriter, and we are all doing touch screen, it's going to be difficult for you. So we have to figure out as a country, what do we need as skills, so that when people graduate, we already know where to place them. But of course, there is an issue of no jobs, and a lot of people have to say governments are not there to create jobs, they're there to enable the environment. So it would be interesting to hear what our panel has to say.
Well, just briefly, I think that all three of those questions are connected. This question of youth employability and what have we done for jobs, I think it's a question that I myself can't answer succinctly, totally, wholly, completely. It's broader than that. It goes right up to the top of the national government. And this is because I think we all of us have to take a time to reflect about our democracy. Democracy means, what is democracy? Democracy means giving every individual their inherent dignity, the dignity that they deserve. And so when you have, for instance, a government that doesn't create policies that allow the youth to get jobs, that doesn't create a plan that allows people who really want a job, who are employable, who possess the talents, but simply just can't go out there and get a job, you're robbing that person of their inherent dignity. And when you do that, then indeed you're stopping the youth from achieving their full potential. Because now you might have a chemical engineer who has to work as a petrol attendant simply to pay the bills. You might have people who have all the talents, all the traits, all the qualities, but simply can't go out there and see their true worth realized. And so we can all play a job in that. We all can play a role in changing that. How do we play a role? How do we go out and change that? Well, we can lobby, we can raise our voices, and this is, I think, a very interesting discussion because it's all interrelated. Of course, to give the youth a voice, you have to have a platform. To have a platform, you have to be able to reach all the youth. To be able to reach all the youth, you have to make sure that all the youth are interconnected. And so these are all problems that I think we can discuss and think of. Problems that I don't think we necessarily have all the answers to. I'm very happy we've discovered, identified these problems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my dear brother. And I think I like the fact that you're coming up with solutions, and I hope this debate also comes up with many solutions. Sima here, delegate that's representing South Africa, is asking what are some of the key issues that has stopped Africa from developing since independence. And I think the issue of peace and security on the continent has to be one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. Since independence, we have not had a very sort of long-term sort of peace on the continent. We've had challenges with so-called, in the late 70s, early 80s, I think some global institutions said the lost decades of Africa, in that most countries were having unconstitutional changes of government, if you like, coup d'etats. And when you have coup d'etats, it leaves flashpoints of violence, investments cannot take place, people die. And some countries also had popular uprisings. So for instance, lately Sudan had popular uprisings, coup d'etats, money. As we speak right now, the so-called issues that of unconstitutional changes of government that we had in the late 70s and early 80s are back. And it's something that we as young people have to arrest, because when you have democratically elected governments getting pushed out by the military or by ordinary people without certain sort of agreed standards of government being followed through, then you have issues. Then of course we have issues of terrorism. It's very unfortunate, even our neighbor here in Mozambique, we see something that we never thought would happen in Southern Africa. We have terrorist attacks. So I think if we deal with sort of silencing the guns, there was an idea of silencing the guns by 2020, which President Mbeki and other heads of states were sort of pushing. If we silence the guns and we have peace in our communities, in our countries, then it leaves an enabling environment for development to take place. Then it goes to another question of unemployment. Now, unemployment is a big crisis. I think it's the pandemic that Africa actually has had for a very, very long time, largely because of there's a big disconnect between the kind of education that young people are being given and what the market needs, the demands. So as a result, I finished my university degree at Wits University, UP or UJ, with flying colors. I'm trying to get a job. However, the skills that I needed in the current market, they don't match with what I have to offer. So I think there's a need to overhaul the whole education system that we have in most African countries. There's also a need for our government to sort of invest in startups and entrepreneurship, skills development, national youth service. I know it's a big debate in South Africa, but in other countries, they've got the best practice of that. As soon as you finish your university, you have an option to spend a year or two doing national service where you learn skills. It's a common challenge.
Recording in progress.
It's a common challenge in most countries where, because I've gone to university, I don't then want to work with my hands. There's a shortage of boiler makers, plumbers, electricians in this country. But most young people, we want to put on a tie, a white shirt and a jacket, and I think we can get that. Then lastly, and probably most importantly, in this discussion that I was having with my good sir here, we need to make agriculture sexy again. We need to make sure that young people get interested in agriculture. And when we say agriculture, we don't mean just going to plant food for subsistence farming. In East Africa, they say kuria, it means eating.
Yeah.
We need to get young people in the whole value chain of agriculture, animal husbandry. We need to get young people in fisheries. And the good say here is from an institution that runs agriculture investments. He actually said he wants to invite young people to an agricultural expo so that the issue of food security that Africa has had for a very long time can be bridged by the very young people that are here. So I encourage you, if you can, to actually go to the sector of agriculture. There's a big gap, and as young Africans, I think we have a lot to offer. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I cannot take further questions. I'm so sorry. But they're here. And Ms. Kawe is on her way. She was stuck at immigration. She's still on her way, so you can still engage with them and ask your questions. But I do want to get this debate started. What do you guys say? Okay, so they're going to be our adjudicators. So you'll be just listening, and you tell me who really strikes you, which country really understands the politics, the economy, the interests, and who is really proposing really forward-looking solutions. So we've dedicated a desk there behind for these gentlemen to be able to observe. Is that okay? Can I then invite the chairperson? We have a 2-minute human break to just stretch while I invite the chair and the co-chair to come.